What's up, basketball fans? Welcome to the Raptor Report. It is time to talk about Bruce Brown because we got some news, rumors, update about potential teams being interested in the services of Bruce Brown. I'm going to be going through each team, talking about what the Raptors could potentially get back. And I do have a trade proposal as well I decided to come up with. So make sure you stay tuned for that as well. So if you're ready to watch this video, make sure to hit the subscribe button. And with that being said, let's get into today's video. Jacoba Reynolds was reporting that the Dallas Mavericks and the New York Knicks have both inquired about Bruce Brown. Dallas contacted the Raptors and made an offer for Brown, but it was rejected according to his sources. He also went on to state a few days later that the Memphis Grizzlies and the Atlanta Hawks are sleeper teams to keep an eye on for Bruce Brown. SI now has learned teams are expected to negotiate with the Raptors, but the Raptors have set a price for Bruce Brown. So one thing I will say when we talk about the Toronto Raptors setting prices for Bruce Brown, we've seen the Raptors do this time and time again where they tried this with Pascal a couple summers ago. It didn't necessarily work out and it seemed like there's a lot of trade interest. They did do that with OG Anunoby as well, but that was a player that was highly coveted. That was a player you could trade on any team around the NBA and who would fit in. And look, ultimately, I think the Raptors made the right choice. They got a couple of good players back in Emmanuel Quickly and RJ Barrett as well. So that was a pretty good deal for the Toronto Raptors, but they cannot absolutely go into the season, especially approaching the trade deadline, hoping there's going to be a bunch of buyers because they did that the last trade deadline and we saw what happened. Reportedly, we're being offered a first round pick in this year's past draft. Probably was in the 20s somewhere, which is probably why the Raptors rejected it. They were seeking a 2025 or 2026 first round pick, but considering how tough those draft classes are, the Raptors aren't going to get a first round pick. So let's take a look at some of these teams and let's start with the Dallas Mavericks because they have apparently made a trade offer, which was rejected by the Toronto Raptors. Taking a look at the Dallas Mavericks roster and salary cap situation here, keeping in mind that Bruce Brown makes about $23 million, you obviously aren't trading guys like PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford. Those are players you acquired, and honestly, they fit really well on that team. Now, if we're looking at money alone, Najee Marshall isn't a player they can add into the deal because he was just signed this offseason. So someone like Maxi Kleber would definitely have to be included in that. You think of guys like Dwight Powell, Dante Exum. I ran that through the trade machine, and even, you know what, maybe throw Quentin Grimes instead of Dante Exum in there. That trade does work. Now, what is Quentin Grimes' value around the NBA? You could argue, he's been on his third team in less than 12 months. That's a lot of teams to be moving around for someone who's only 24, right? So I don't know what's going on with him. But I don't know. That's not the sexiest of offers, right? Again, to just reiterate what I said, Maxi Kleber is making $11 million. Quentin Grimes is making $4.2 million. I honestly doubt they included him. So it's very likely Dwight Powell, who's making $4 million, and Dante Exum, who's making $3.1 million, which adds up to close to what Bruce Brown is making, or at least worked in the trade machine, which isn't a great offer. It really isn't, guys. When you take a look at how much money the Raptors are taking on, again, we don't know if any picks were included. I don't even know if the Mavericks have a ton of picks they can throw, but that is not a good offer. So automatically, like, you got to scratch Dallas off of there unless it's got to be a three-team trade. And even then, how much can Dallas really offer the third team involved? It's in question, right? But moving on to a team like Memphis Grizzlies, that's where gets really interesting here. When you take a look at their roster, $23 million, how are they going to come up with that? Are they going to trade Marcus Smart, who's making $20 million? Absolutely not. They also cannot trade Luke Kennard, who they just signed recently. So realistically, it would have to be Brandon Clark, $12.5 million, and then add in a few guys. You could add John Concher in there, excuse me. You could add, other guys like Santi Aldama as well. And this is a trade I cooked up, which the trade machine did go through as well. So it looked like it worked. And taking a look at this trade here, you get the Raptors receiving Brandon Clark, Santi Aldama for Bruce Brown. Now, the Raptors don't get a first round pick, and a lot of Grizzlies fans and even a lot of NBA fans may question why the Grizzlies would do this for simple reason only. When you look at the Grizzlies roster, what has been the one thing that has been hurting them so much? Injuries, injuries, and more injuries. And who better to trade than Brandon Clark? Now, I know a lot of Grizzlies fans have told me that they view Brandon Clark very highly, which is fine and understandable. But considering how much money he's making, also the terms on the contract as well, for a player that's just been nonstop injury prone, that's, again, he's a good player. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's a bad player, but you could see why the Grizzlies would be wanting to move off of him. Also taking into consideration, I'm going to quickly go back on the previous screen here. they got a lot of guys making a ton of money, right? So also when you consider that Brandon Clark is a power forward, Santi Aldama, who I'll get to in just a moment as well. The reason they trade Brandon Clark here, guys, when you take a look at their roster, they obviously got Zach Edey, which allowed Jaren Jackson Jr. to slide to that power forward position. Then you got Gigi Jackson playing the power forward position. You also got Jake LaRivia playing the power forward position as well. Now, the reason they trade Santi Aldama here is maybe they probably don't want to pay him for the new contract, right? So they get an expiring contract in Bruce Brown, which helps them with money. Again, the Grizzlies aren't a big market team. People need to keep that in mind. So they're shedding a little bit of salary here, but also just to create more room for some of the young guys coming in as well, provide them with more opportunity while saving some money as well. So I think that's why the Grizzlies do this. Again, a lot of people are going to say the Grizzlies aren't going to do this, and realistically, they probably aren't. Maybe Santi Aldama isn't included in this deal. Maybe John Concher is, and then you get a second round pick. That could be a trade that could also work. But again, the Raptors are taking on a ton of money and turn in terms of deal years as well, right? Brandon Clark, John Concher would both have about 3 years still left on the contract. So you would have to include at least a couple second round picks if you're asking me. But that's what I got in terms of what the Grizzlies could go back, give you, excuse me, in Bruce Brown trade. Let's move on to our third team here. Now, this is the Atlanta Hawks again, a very interesting team here. A lot of people have obviously suggested someone like a DeAndre Hunter making $21 million. This is also a player they've been trying to get rid of for many, many seasons now. Not a lot of teams want him. And look, he's not a bad player. When we talk about the Raptors' needs, what are some of the needs the Raptors have is they need someone that can play the small forward position. He can also play the power forward position too. He's like 6'8", I believe. He weighs pretty well. He's a pretty big size, pretty big body. You can throw at the power forward position. He also shoots threes really well and isn't really old. When I mean 26 is fairly young in today's NBA, and he kind of fits in the timeline. Again, he's making a ton of money. So if they are including someone like a DeAndre Hunter, I do believe they should at least throw in one second round pick as well. But another player not a lot of people I see talking about is Bogdan Bogdanovic. Now you're asking why they would trade him. He's 32 years old. He's only getting older. And when you take a look at the salary cap numbers at the bottom there for Atlanta Hawks, it's not looking good. $169 million this season. So obviously they would get Bruce Brown's expiring contract. So maybe they look to move off of Bogdan, which would be a nice addition for the Toronto Raptors. Let's be honest, a great three-point shooter, great bench player, and someone that can score is something the Raptors need, right? But again, they would probably have to add in maybe additional salaries as well. So Atlanta Hawks definitely could be an interesting team, no doubt about it. And you know what? In terms of money, similarly to the other teams, they need to shed some money, and Bruce Brown is in an expiring contract. So I could definitely see someone like a DeAndre Hunter, even Bogdan being shipped for Bruce Brown as well. So that would be fascinating. But in terms of our last team here, the New York Knicks, I don't understand why the Knicks are being mentioned here. It doesn't make sense. Guys, let's be honest. I've ran through the trade machine. It would have to be Mitchell Robinson. It would have to be Cameron Payne. It would have to be someone like Miles McBride, who they just signed. And I know they view him very highly. They're not going to do that. They're not shedding three for one piece. They're definitely not including Josh Hart, let's be honest. Also, just to throw that out there. So, again, not a ton of, in terms of just the Knicks, when we talk about making the money work, sure, they could be a team that may look to shed salary. They do have to pay Mikal Bridges as well. Let's not forget. But I just don't see a deal getting done here. Like the Raptors wouldn't necessarily want Mitchell Robinson. Sure, maybe if you're getting rid of, Jakob Pearl, that'd be nice. But we know he's got some attitude issues. But in terms of some of the other pieces as well, it just does not make a lot of sense, guys. It doesn't make a ton of sense. So again, those are the four teams that I've, gone through that were being rumored. I see the Memphis Grizzlies and the Atlanta Hawks being the most sensible teams in terms of players you can actually acquire and you'd want in return as well. So I'm very curious to hear what you guys think about these trade rumors. Do you think they have a realistic chance of acquiring Bruce Brown, any of these teams? And what do you think the Raptors could get back? Let me know in the comment section below. And that will be it for today's video. So thank you so much for watching. And I hope you guys have yourselves a great day.